These are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Tracy Fitzpatrick, and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining us here at Netcom Learning, a market leader in promoting lifelong learning, training, and talent development solutions. We're very excited to host today's webinar, .NET Skills for Powerful Mobile Solutions. Presenting today's topic is Alicia Townsend. Alicia is a Microsoft certified trainer with over 24 years of experience as a technical trainer and strategic consultant with in-depth knowledge of Microsoft development principles, practices, and products. She's delivered instructor-led training in classrooms and virtual environments to internal and external customers. And she's also proficient and has delivered numerous Microsoft curriculums. Now, please bear in mind that this is an overview of a very robust topic. We do offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored towards your specific requirements. If you are interested in a further discussion, you can make an appointment with our learning consultants through our website at netcomlearning.com. Today's session is also being recorded, so you will get free access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. Netcom Learning helps customers build innovative learning organizations by achieving a smarter workforce, adapting to change, and driving growth. We do this with a broad catalog of offerings, developing customized learning plans, and our global delivery capabilities. Since 1998, we have been empowering organizations with our managed learning services to help them reach optimal performance results and address challenges. We do have 9 practice areas in which we specialize. They encompass people, process, and technology training. Today's presentation will be from the Application Development Practice Area. Netcom Learning does offer a comprehensive training portfolio for application development courses. And here is a list of our upcoming classes on our public schedule, which you can also see right up there on your screens. We will be offering Developing ASP.NET MC5 Web Applications, which will take place on July 16th. MCSA Web Applications Combo will be held on July 9th, as well as Programming in C Visual Studio 2012 on August the 6th, as well as the others that you see up on your screens with the dates to follow. You can also deliver, we can deliver private training to you or to teams of which the learning plan can be customized to the specific needs of the audience. These offerings can be found with a simple search on our website at netcomlearning.com. So, why should you attend this webinar today? Netcom Learning presents an important installment in its .NET Skills for Powerful Mobile Solutions. In this webinar, you'll gain knowledge of how to gain expertise in building compelling native mobile apps for Android, iOS, and UWP platforms with Visual Studio tools. The webinar not only helps us in understanding the comparison of desktop and mobile APIs, but also how to optimize UX, UI while porting desktop applications to tablets or mobile devices. Now I'd like to give you a quick overview of the logistics before we get started. To begin with, you do have the option to adjust the window size to your liking. Simply hit the Escape key and find the Zoom button on the top left corner of your GoToWebinar viewer. Everyone has been muted except for our presenters. Please feel free to submit any questions you do have for the presenters here in the questions pane, and we will address them at the end of the session. A PDF copy of today's slides are also in the handout section of your GoToWebinar viewer. And in just a moment, I'm going to pass this off to Alicia, who will be presenting today's topic. Okay, Alicia, go ahead. You are live and have the screen.
All right, I have unmuted myself. I am sharing my screen, and you should see my slides in front of you. Good afternoon. So here today, obviously, we're doing .NET Skills for mobile, or powerful mobile solutions. Start off just basic overview of .NET. Everybody's coming from different levels, and there's a reason why we want to, always understand the .NET framework itself and .NET. It is the base, obviously, that we are using to develop these applications. And they've taken basically that same philosophy that went into the building of the .NET framework and are applying it now to the mobile applications, which is why this is kind of exciting. So we'll start off there. I want to learn, obviously, the design and deploy native applications. And so our most exciting new feature coming here is Xamarin, Xamarin. Xamarin, it is pronounced like a Z in the beginning, but it starts with an X. And that is really the add-in to our framework that is going to allow us to develop a mobile app for multiple platforms. So I'll actually give you a look at like the basic template that's available through Visual Studio. Even if you have like the community edition of Visual Studio, you can start designing your mobile apps using Xamarin here. And then just a little bit more design we'll look at. So we'll look at, you know, designing for desktop versus designing for mobile applications. Big issue with mobile applications is going to be speed. You know, talk about some of the numbers as far as, you know, lose your audience if it takes more than a couple of seconds for particular pieces to load. So comparing actually the APIs and maybe having to redesign some of your APIs. So we're talking about like those back-end components. Like you already might have a desktop application where, you know, your presentation layer is developed to run on, say, a Windows desktop, and all that business logic and data access is running on a separate server. But when you're designing for the desktop application, there's some different things that we've got to keep in mind as far as designing those APIs, especially like response time for the APIs, desktop versus mobile. So talk about a few of those points. And then, you know, basic UX, which is sort of that template, you know, that framework that we're designing for our user interface, and then the user interface itself, which of course we want to be kind of splashy because you really want to catch your audience real quickly there when it comes to these mobile apps. And then of course we just finish off with a basic question and answer at the end here. So just starting off with .NET. Again, .NET came out obviously, you know, 2003, so been over 15 years or so that I've been playing with this world. It was originally designed to be cross-platform. The intent was really to kind of, you know, compete with Java out there, right? Where the Java engine was something that I could run on a Windows system. It was something that I could run on Linux or Unix. And if I knew how to write Java, basically I could port my application to different operating systems and it should still work. And that was the original vision of the .NET framework. Now, the reality was that for the most part, it's remained in the Windows world, but there are actually versions of it that you can run on other platforms. So the framework itself is made up of multiple components. The core is the common language runtime there that you see at the bottom. It's kind of like that Java runtime, right? That's where the code is actually executing. And then the code that we're using, a big bulk of it, has been predefined for us. So we have a whole bunch of classes that have already been developed for us that define, like, you know, Windows applications to web applications to now to mobile applications to data access. And of course, these have been added to over the years. We have things like the entity framework that we utilize. We've got JSON in there instead of XML. All of these have been added to, giving us more and more tools out of the box to start our coding with. And then of course, we can create our own classes, and we can inherit from some of these classes, or, you know, utilize the interfaces that have already been developed for us. So that the components that we work with can, you know, that we're developing can work with other components out there. But it gives us this really, really strong base. And I always kind of like the .NET world because, again, it's kind of controlled. Unlike Java, it's a little bit more like anarchy. Right? Java's the world of anarchy. Everybody kind of creates their own pieces and kind of mix and match as you wish to. This one's a little bit more straightforward, but it is very, very flexible. And so we've been adding to this base, of course, again, the common language runtime. It's where the code actually executes. The power of the common language runtime, the code itself gets compiled into an intermediary language. So again, one of the original visions of the .NET framework was that you could develop in whatever language you were comfortable with, right? We have different flavors of .NET languages. We've got VB.NET. We have actually like a JSharp.NET, which looks kind of like Java. And there's a native language called C#.NET. So the idea was that my developers could write in the language that they're comfortable with, but all that code could execute against each other and interop with each other because it would be executing in this common language runtime space. And thus we have, the compilers that work together. We've got the class loader itself. We've got a security engine that they're able to share. We can, debug through all of that code. They can share exceptions, all of these pieces. We even have a memory management system, the garbage collector, that basically, if we forget to destroy our objects, will destroy them for us, which is kind of nice because that's always been sort of a problem in our coding world. So all these pieces based on the common language runtime. And again, that's where all the code executes, whether it was written originally in C#, VB.NET, JSharp, there's Perl.NET, there's lots of flavors out there. Again, the reality is that most people who consider themselves .NET developers write in C#. So that was one of the native languages. It's very similar to Java, so it's not difficult for Java programmers to pick up C#. VBs that are kept to the world of the hobbyist. So it's still not quite as popular as the rest, but that's what we're utilizing, the C# here. And again, this is just showing the same concept that I was telling you, where I can write in whatever language I want to, but it all gets compiled into, again, an intermediary language, which then, depending upon the operating system, again, going back to one of its original goals where it's portable to different OSs, would then get compiled into the native code of that operating system. Is possible nowadays, not that common, but it's possible. Okay, again, mostly Microsoft world. All right, and then this is just a subsampling of, again, all those libraries that we have available to us. So lots of stuff that they're giving us out of the box to play with. So now, most importantly, now that we've gotten that main stuff out of the way, is the world of Xamarin. So I have one slide that has Xamarin here. Okay. So Xamarin came out 2017 towards the end. Really sort of came to fruition around then. I think it had been out for a little while, but really kind of hitting its stride. And the idea is that this is something that I can install into Visual Studio, which is of course my development environment. So I'm actually going to switch over to my Visual Studio. I'm going to bring this over here. So here's Visual Studio that I have running on this local desktop. And this is actually a Xamarin template, okay? So idea is, this is actually a community version of Visual Studio I have running on this particular system. I went and I ran, Windows Visual Studio installer. So through Visual Studio installer, depending upon how you originally installed it, you might not have installed all the possible templates that are available. So this is the mobile app templates. So if you run Visual Studio installer, you'll see the mobile app templates. It can take a while for it to download, depends upon obviously your internet speed, but it will extend Visual Studio such that if I go and do something fun like this, file, new project, I will see things like Android, Apple TV, Apple Watch, and what's really fun is cross-platform here. Now, depending upon which version, this is evolved over time since even, 6 months ago. They had a few different templates that were here for the cross-platform. I think they actually had a section that was called mobile at one point over there. But this is sort of the base one now, this mobile app template. And so this is what I've actually created over here in Visual Studio. And so what we're looking at is sort of the main app up here, which is originally called App 2, which is sort of an MVC type design. I've got a XAML structure to my page over here. So I would, define my model view controller kind of stuff, just like I might for like an MVC application. I'm writing my code in C#, but then notice here, I also have like Android, Apple iOS, and of course, if you really wanted to, you have the Windows one down here. So basically, what I can do is I designed a single app here, but then I actually have simulators that are kind of built in. Now, the simulators are a little weird game. Like for the Apple simulator, I actually kind of need a Mac server around to really simulate it. So, there's some prereqs to really getting full-blown simulators. The Android one works okay. You got to make sure you have the right version of it. But basically, I can design the app a single time, and I can render it and test it out, simulate it for iOS, for Android, and even then package it up from there. Again, the packaging and deployment will be a different process depending upon whether we're talking iOS or we're talking Android. They do recommend, and it does work out best, obviously, if you do have actual devices that you can test out deployment to. Deploying Android OS stuff is much easier than the iOS stuff. But this is much, much easier in case you've tried this before than what you've had to do in the past. Obviously, with mobile applications, the history of this is having to design separate projects for each, so it's a different front end kind of design for each one of my mobile apps. I might have some sort of shared code behind them that they have in common, but even then I might have to find ways of porting that to the different OSs. And here I've got a single project. I can create a single sort of interface. So just focus on the overall design of it. Notice I do have tags in here that can be specific to particular platforms, so I can adjust to some of the functionality that is unique to some of those platforms as necessary, but there will be a much more consistent design and much shorter development process. I really only have to kind of like develop it once. Again, then it's just a matter of testing, obviously, rendering and deploying to the different operating systems, but I don't have to go through a separate development process for each version of the OS. So we go, yay for Xamarin. Okay. And there is a course on Xamarin. Ha, isn't that convenient? So that's my big exciting part. And the idea is, and as I kind of mentioned before, it's following along with that nice philosophy of the .NET framework, where I've got sort of this shared base. So my logic app and even the user interface code itself is shared among the 3 different apps. So again, I'm just doing some fine tuning that's specific to those separate platforms, but I am not having to fully develop 3 separate mobile applications. Okay, so definitely worth your time looking into and spending some time playing with it. There's the class, there's lots of tutorials out there, big movement. If you don't have Visual Studio, just download the community version of it. You can start playing with it. Definitely. All right. So that being said, as I said, deployment is slightly different. So these are just URLs they're referencing like specifically for the App Store and for Android, how to go about doing the deployment, the information, is available through the Microsoft Docs. This is where it's going. So, obviously for deploying for something like AppOS, iOS, I need an app ID. You have to go through the whole App Store process for them. As I said, for Android, it's a little bit easier. There are ways of emailing it off and installing it. So if you're brand new to this, I would start with the Android route. It's much easier. If you do have a Windows device, you could go the Windows route. But Android's a little bit easier to find nowadays, cheaper. So I would start with developing for the Android, and then you can get yourself into Apple app registration and start developing for the Apple apps themselves. Again, just take the same piece that you developed in Xamarin, and now you can get it deployed to the Apple App Store. All right, so design-wise, again, when you're entering into this world of developing for mobile applications, mobile devices, the overall process is the same, right? I need some hot idea, And again, this is a hot idea that can reach the masses versus like desktop apps. We might be limiting ourselves more to like business type process stuff. But you know, this you can like sell to your grandma kind of thing. Design is important because we are designing for the masses typically. A lot of these things. The expectations, even for those who are business users, the expectations of the design are actually much higher. It tends to be for mobile apps than it is for the desktop apps. So there are certain expectations that we have, and I'm going to go over a few of those as well as we go through here. But obviously, I still need some sort of design phase. I need a consistent look, so that's where that UX design comes in, so that wireframe type process that we go through, and then you know the pretty colors and stuff that go into the actual UI design itself. Then obviously we have development process, go through testing, so stabilization and deployment. And we do a lot of this in sort of phases. We do a lot of sort of multi-tier design, right? So we can upgrade certain parts of the application without having to roll out brand new pieces all the time. So none of that is different. And again, mobile apps are not meant to replace our desktop applications, right? Desktop applications still provide best response time, the richest experience. I got lots of real estate to work with. Desktop applications still fill a need. I remember back when Windows 8 first came out, I had to go out and I was teaching what they called Metro apps back then, which were the Windows, Windows 8. That was the original look and feel of Windows 8. Everybody's going to want a tablet-like interface, even for their desktops. That was an idiot move. But and so Metro apps were the apps that you can develop. They called them originally Metro apps. Anyway, so this company, they wanted to be on the cutting edge, and they had these high-end printers that had incredibly complicated driver interfaces because they were doing carving as part of their printing. Like they created 3D things. It wasn't spitting out type of 3D, but they carved pieces as part of their printing process. And so they flew me out and they wanted to know everything about Metro apps because they wanted to redesign their interface for a Metro app. And in the end, and I could have told them if they told me this up front, but in the end, the conclusion was their piece was too complicated to do as a Metro app. They needed that rich user experience that a desktop application affords them. So again, obviously mobile apps, everybody's trying to think of their great mobile app idea and make their $1 million idea with it. But desktop applications still have their place in this world. So keep that in mind, number one, when you're with your design. So not everything needs to be redesigned as a mobile app, but the key to the mobile app is a simpler design. And then I love this phrase. Oh, it shouldn't say link, but anyway, minimum cognitive load. Forget the link part. Minimum cognitive load. Minimum cognitive load refers to the amount of brain power used to require to run that app. Okay, again, we don't want it to be that complicated. If it's too complicated, they're gonna leave it. They're not gonna use it. If they can't immediately figure out how to use it, they're gonna go away. They're gonna find something else. Okay, so simple design, easy to use, are key when it comes to these mobile applications. And again, I'll mention a few other points when it comes to the basic design. But one of the other things that we want to talk about, and again, I have limited time, so I'm trying to cover it all within my short little period of time. One of the other things is the API. So we mentioned, again, I could take an existing desktop app and try to port it over to a mobile app. Okay, I've got some fine examples, even as an administrator of various systems on my phone. For example, I administrate for some Office 365 interfaces, right? So there's a web app, it's not a desktop app, but there's a web app for me administrating Office 365, and there's a mobile app for the Office 365 admin portal. I can do a lot more through the web application than I can through the portal, but it shares a lot of the same information. So as developers, never want to code what somebody else has already coded. Shouldn't be copying and pasting things from one place to the other. So it makes sense that a lot of that functionality is defined into an API, and both the web application and the mobile application might be calling those same APIs. Okay? So same thing when I'm importing a desktop application into a mobile app, that again, there is some sort of API that they would have in common. But the problem is, for the most part, really that first bullet point there. The user expectations for responsiveness are huge. And then that leads into the other ones. That leads into the amount of data that I'm going to pull in. The amount of data can affect my response time. Thus, I might not need, if I don't need that much data on my mobile app, I might want to cut down the amount of data that actually gets pulled into the mobile device itself. Interaction, again, hardware-wise, say, features with the operating system can affect my response time. And even mobile apps that have to interact with other pieces. So, accommodate multiple simultaneous type of interactions. So specifically, here are some serious numbers. What takes 4 seconds on a desktop, depending upon the bandwidth for your mobile device, could take hours. Yes, we have 4G, 5G. They keep trying to make it faster. But still, there are times when you're driving down that road and you've got 1 bar. You should be playing with your app when you're driving down the road. But you're the passenger in the seat, driving down, and somebody else is driving you down the road, and you only got 1 bar. Okay? 4 seconds. 4 in 10 Americans say they'll give up a mobile app if it takes more than 3 seconds to load. People have no patience. A 1 second delay creates a 16% decrease in customers' dissatisfaction. Speed is key here. Yes, it could be because of the 1 bar. But if I have 4 bars, and again, it's still taking forever, they're going to blame your app. They lose the patience with it. They're going to move on to something else. So that means that those APIs that might have had a decent response time for your web or your desktop applications, because I didn't have to worry about the bandwidth because, I'm on the same network kind of thing. I do now have to redesign them to return maybe less data in a faster amount of time, okay, to that client system, i.e. the mobile device itself. So again, I can speed it up by limiting the amount of data. So maybe when I go to the desktop app, I can see events that can go back, for the past year. But, the recent stuff on my app here is only going to be for, the last day or so. Because that's all that I really need to see if I'm sitting by the pool trying to troubleshoot things versus if I'm sitting at my desktop and actually doing work, maybe I want some deeper analysis of it to see the trends for the last year. Okay. We also have to take in mind some of the limitations of the devices themselves. Again, they're becoming bigger, better, faster. But, my mom still has an old iPhone. She's not going to get a new one and still it doesn't work anymore. I think she has a 6. I'm not too sure anymore. Okay. So power consumption, the mobile databases themselves, again, how efficiently they're defined. Any interaction with other, systems on the devices, and again, there can be difference across the different platforms. We need to optimize for those. So Xamarin's awesome, but as I said, that'll design the basic app, the consistency for that basic app, but you're still going to have to tweak it for each one of those OSs that you are designing for. It's not a perfect solution. There's no perfect solution yet. Okay, we still got to do some of those planning to optimize this. And again, some of the APIs might interact with other devices, other applications, and we've got to keep that in mind and obviously test. when we're developing these things, right? How many of the apps will interact with, using PayPal to make the payment? So they're actually interacting with my PayPal app on the phone, right? Or there are apps now that interact with, other systems that are out there. And then last piece here is the optimizing the UX. So again, when we say UX, we're talking like as I said, I reference it as what we call it, the wireframe, the general design. So they tend to be kind of like, when they're seeing them make Toy Story, the making of Toy Story, they're doing those like little screenshots, little sketches of what's going to happen here and here. Okay. And then the UI design is the actual, we decide the full color scheme, we decide images, we decide the icons. And there are general guidelines that are being handed out by all of our platform development environments. Okay. And there is definitely commonality among them. Like, simplest is best. Least about brain power is best. Do not make a whole bunch of complicated little buttons left, right, and center. Do not stray off the given path as far as common icons that we are used to. That's a good across-the-board UI design, by the way. That little triangle that points to the right, we all understand that's a play button. You putting a little person doing a little dance, probably not that cool. Yeah, it's creative, but not everybody's going to get it. And you need people to get it. If you're designing for a very small audience, fine. That's not going to make you a whole bunch of money. Depends on what your purpose is, of course. If you don't want to make a bunch of money, no problem. So again, the general guidelines are declutter. Instead of 5 controls, can you simplify the basic options down to maybe 3? And then maybe if they click on something, they have some sub options. You can do that. That's breaking tasks down into bite-size chunks. Okay. So I don't want, again, I don't have the same real estate that I have for a desktop. I can't have a whole bunch of little complicated options up here. So I have to break it down into like separate little screens that they have to go to. And use what is familiar as much as possible. You have another reference over here. And these are from our friends over in Adobe. Come on. Oh, my link this one. Oh, that's annoying. Anyway, you can go to it. So Adobe, I don't know why it doesn't want to bring up my link, but anyway, but there's again, the common look and feel like an about page, like a, title screens. There is common expectation that we have when it comes to our apps. Don't try to be out of the box totally. Again, if people don't get it, they're probably not going to utilize it. Okay. And because we have to break things down into these smaller chunks, because we might have to have them go through multiple screens, we want to make it, again, as absolutely easy as possible. So if we can anticipate what they need to fill it in for them. That's, minimizing their input, anticipating their needs, giving them tools. I like it when apps give me the ability to, like, instead of having to type in my credit card number, I can use the camera on my phone to scan in the card number from my card. That's cool, right? That minimizes my input. Okay. Anticipating my needs. What are my default values? Being able to save some of those things. Making it so that it is apparent what is important on the screen by weighting things. A map that has like a large, number next to the next step that I need to take in order to get to my final destination. Font sizes that are bolded, or fonts that are bolded for me to highlight the parts of the screen itself that I need to focus on. Draw my eyes to it. And again, creativity, my own special jargon in my own world. Not everybody's gonna get it. You are designing for the masses. Keep it as simple as possible. Now, if you are designing an app that is used just in-house by your people, fine. But apps are usually designed for all, try to reach as many people as possible. Everybody has a phone nowadays. It is the way to reach them. All right, so again, this was sort of a brief overview in my 30 minutes or so, I think it was. Obviously, this is a huge world of development, but I do encourage you to go and play with it. Start today. Download Community. If you already have Community, make sure you've got the mobile forms in there. And, if you know XAML, you started doing some of that stuff, the MVC stuff, it should be familiar, but there are also some tutorials, and look at some of the classes that are being offered by Netcom to help you along the way, both with the MVC apps, the MVC classes there. It's one of the more popular .NET classes, and as well as the newer Xamarin Forms class. So have fun, guys. And I will hand it back over.
Thank you so much, Alicia. That was very informative. And as we celebrate our 20th anniversary to serve you with best-in-class IT and business certification training, we are bringing you an unbeatable 20th year celebration offer this month to make your learning even more fantastic. We're actually offering up to 50% off on some of our most popular courses. Netcom Learning offers a comprehensive portfolio for application development courses as well, and you can check those out right up there on your screen. So be sure to take advantage of all of our amazing classes. And team training can be customized and accelerated to meet your organization's specific needs. You can contact us today to be connected to one of our learning consultants to help advise you on your specific needs. You can email us at webinar@netcomlearning.com or simply search our catalog at netcomlearning.com as well. And we all know technical skills are necessary to empower our careers, but do you need to improve or upgrade your leadership skills as well in order to accelerate your career? Along with your technical abilities, develop the skills you need to manage yourself, others, and business better. Welcome to Starter Learning, a collaborative knowledge platform bringing you the world's best business and leadership insights from Fortune 1000 leaders, best-selling authors, and Ivy League professors. Further, if you are interested in learning from the top American leaders, you can log on to the e-learning platform at starterlearning.com and avail the special promotion meant for first-time users. You can use coupon code STARTER10 and begin your leadership journey now. And right now, we are going to launch a quick poll to find out how many people might be interested in taking some additional training. So please take a few minutes to fill that out before you all have to log off and go to work. Again, it will just take a few minutes. In addition, we do have a lot more informative webinars coming up, and you can go to netcomlearning.com/webinars in order to register. Also, you can follow and like our social media pages to get the latest technology updates. Please refer to the GoToWebinar chat window right up there on your screen to check out all of our links. And anything else you would want to add, Alicia, before we have to sign off?
I'm good.
You were great. Thank you so much for that informative webinar, and thank you all for joining us today. If you do come up with any additional questions, feel free to send them to webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. We hope that you found today's webinar informative, and we look forward to seeing you back here with us soon. Feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Have a great day, everyone.